ICBM. Senior defense officials say that Pyongyang may conduct the test to show it's capable of hitting the U.S. with a nuclear strike. The country's defense minister also informed lawmakers he is forming a military unit whose mission is to exclusively target North Korea's leadership. The minister then reportedly said that it's worth reviewing the redeployment of American tactical nuclear weapons to the Korean peninsula. South Korea has also announced preparations are complete for the full operation of the THAAD missile defense system. It was deployed in South Korea by the U.S. President Moon Jae-in was initially cautious about its deployment.
Right, Beverly, it's been said a million times, everyone says it because it's true, which is that there are no good options whatsoever. Do you like the way that this is being handled now, or do you wish it were being handled differently?
I think there are things that do work well and things that don't. I will say we can come together as a country and say there really are no good options, as you already said on the show. But I would say in some of President Trump's tweets today, I was a little concerned that he seemed to bash South Korea a bit, saying that their process of appeasement hasn't worked. I was glad to see later in the day that he did meet with them, with some of their leaders there, because we need our allies to be very close. He also had another tweet saying that maybe we should stop trade with China. That would have huge economic implications if we did that. So I would say in some ways the fact that he's tried diplomacy, try to keep us out of any type of war is a good thing, but I think he needs to be careful about some of his tweets and what he thinks are solutions.
Following Pyongyang's most powerful nuclear test to date, the United States used an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to send out a stern message. Enough is enough. It's also calling for the strongest possible sanctions to be slapped on Pyongyang, and it wants the council to vote next Monday. Well, the American ambassador said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's use of missiles and nuclear threats shows he is begging for war.
War is never something the United States wants. We don't want it now. But our country's patience is not unlimited.
Japan's UN ambassador said countries should put more pressure on the North before its actions bring about serious consequences.
Japan stresses the need for the Council to adopt swiftly a new resolution with further robust sanction measures.
Diplomatic sources say the council members will discuss banning North Koreans from working abroad and cutting off oil shipments to the country. China and Russia remain cautious over additional sanctions.
I'm not sure that they will influence the other side to abandon what they have been doing. And this is not the way to get parties at the table, and to seek for a political solution, which we are all in favor of.
Moscow and Beijing are also reportedly proposing a so-called freeze-for-freeze option, where the North halts nuclear and missile testing in return for the suspension of U.S. and South Korea military exercises. Nikki Haley reportedly called the proposal insulting. On Sunday, North Korea tested what it claimed to be a hydrogen bomb that could fit on a long-range missile.
A note penned by former U.S. President Barack Obama to his successor Donald Trump refers to the importance of upholding democratic values. U.S. network CNN, which has obtained a full copy of the letter, suggests Trump has not followed his predecessor's handwritten advice. It's a White House tradition for outgoing leaders to leave some words of wisdom for the incoming president. Obama left his letter in a drawer at the Oval Office in January. He wrote that the role of president is unique, without a clear blueprint for success, adding he did not know whether his advice will be particularly helpful. But he described American leadership in the world as indispensable. Obama urged Trump, through action and example, to sustain the international order that's expanded steadily since the end of the Cold War. He also reminded the newly elected leader, "We are just temporary occupants of this office." Obama wrote that it was the role of the president to serve as a guardian of democratic institutions and traditions.
To communicate with others. And I think that China knows that. We probably wouldn't actually ever do anything like that.
The problem is China hasn't held up on their end of the bargain. President Trump believed in good faith that they would come to the table and that they would apply pressure to the North Koreans. That has not worked out, at least so far. And with North Korea, we either neutralize them or they're going to neutralize us in our ability to respond to their development of this nuclear weapons program. And with all due respect, I don't think that they're going to do it. And so the time is of the essence, because once they have the ability to deliver a nuclear warhead to Manhattan or Los Angeles via an ICBM, and it's just a question of miniaturizing a nuclear warhead to be able to deliver it here. They're already working on that technology, and they're far ahead of schedule compared to where our intelligence community thought they were. Once they have that, they have neutralized our ability to respond to them. They are then they're closer to parity than they are today. And that's a real concern. And so this is a ticking time bomb, literally. And the time for appeasement is over. And in South Korea, they had a recent election. You would think that North Korea would be the top issue on the ballot. It was number 3. It was number 3. And the South Koreans, their president wanted to go and co-host the Winter Olympics with North Korea. I mean, they're not an equal partner here. They don't want to help pay for their defense. So the president has to take control of the situation because the South Koreans aren't.
I do think that the Chinese are okay with there's sort of this appeasement type of philosophy to be able to say, sure, it's okay if North Korea gets this type of weapon. But what they are afraid of, what the Chinese are worried about, is actually North Koreans fleeing North Korea and going into China. They're much more worried about the migration of those people moving into there. But again, we need to engage the Chinese, but we have to be ready for a military strike and may have to be proactive.
And they're worried about other things too. In addition to just the refugee problem, they don't want Japan to have this huge military force or South Korea to ramp up and just create all that conflict in that area. They don't want that.
I understand that, but I'm with Harlan on this. I think there's so much of what they shouldn't want, Kat, and what they should be considering, and then there's what they're just absolutely not doing, and they're not showing any kind of good faith effort. And for many, many, many years, we've been saying the answer to this lies with China. And if China steps up, if China plays their part, China's not doing any of that. So the most provocative tweet that I saw today, I'll go with you, Beverly, when the president says he is considering stopping all trade with any country, not just doing business, Congressman, enabling North Korea to the highest level. I think that has to be a viable threat, no matter how expensive it makes our iPhones or anything else, because I don't see China moving with any other option other than that type of severe economic pressure.
No, I think it's definitely concerning. We do need to look at all options. I do think China is the key. But when you make a statement like that without knowing what some of the implications could be, I think you have to be careful. I mean, stopping trade with a country where we do a lot of trade with them, that impacts a lot of business.
Oh, I think we have to be very serious and we don't put empty threats out. I guess what I'm saying, maybe it's provocative. I don't know. Y'all tell me. But I also think it's provocative that we are possibly within weeks of North Korea being nuclear in a way that we never imagined before.
Ebony, the dichotomy that we have here is either we threaten to suspend trade with China and our iPhones cost more, or we have
more
a nuclear
than just iPhones
or whatever.
Our economy would tank in a lot of areas.
Either we suspend trade or we have a radical dictator that is totally unhinged that has the capability to deliver a nuclear warhead to the continental United States. So either we go through some short-term pain readjusting our economy and bringing back manufacturing here, or we run up against a tyrannical dictator that will have a gotcha card over us that we will never be able to eliminate. Containment doesn't work, as we've seen with Pakistan.
Again, it's not so simple to just stop all trade with China.
Oh.
It's really
it's simple though.
It's certainly not.
War or trade.
But it's not nuclear war or trade because we don't really know. There's a lot of experts who think that if we don't do anything to him first, he won't do anything to us because him doing anything to us, he knows is basically like saying, hey, I'd like to be blown up now and my whole entire country to be blown up too.
Look at what Kim Jong-un has seen. He saw Iran try to develop its nuclear weapons, and what did they do? They got rewarded by the United States of America. President Obama gave him $150 billion and gave him a pathway.
Which is exactly why I hate the Iran deal, and that's why you cannot. Every country is not designed to do a deal with, right? And we have to really stop kidding ourselves. The diplomacy of any sort is viable. With someone like Iran, I don't think a deal can be done, and I think the same is true with North Korea.
I will say I'm very thankful that we do have anti-ballistic missile defense systems here in this country. We have that in South Korea. They're already looking at it today. That's something that plenty of people on the left didn't want the United States to have. It's not the solution to this, but I'm glad we have a defense.
I agree. I'm glad that we have a defense as well. I just think that this is such a complicated issue. And when you start talking about things like completely stopping with trade with China, I mean, that would be a huge, huge deal. Absolutely. I
think it's all a huge deal, though, right?
Of course it is. And it does rest with China.
The major trade that goes on in North Korea is over the border with China. That's where the black market is. That's where the trade's going on. For far too long, as President Trump pointed out, we have actually funded the North Koreans in order to develop this. It was fundamentally wrong. I don't believe Kim Jong-un cares a hill of beans about any of his people. I don't think he's motivated by sanctions, but I do think it does get the attention of the Chinese. And if there's somebody that can be the pivotal person to actually, push the envelope there, I do think it is the Chinese.
In all due respect, Congressman, last time he acted up, the Chinese said that they were going to suspend coal imports from North Korea to China. And that wasn't enough. He's continuing to continue. And we're seeing an escalation, not a de-escalation. I'm not sure that China is equipped to handle this. I think that they have lost control. I would love to believe that you're right, that they do have control over this guy, that he's just a puppet. I don't think that that's the case anymore. And maybe that's why they're starting to ramp up their rhetoric publicly, because behind the scenes, they're not able to exert the control that they used to be able to.
And I will say this, even if Kim Jong-un doesn't plan to do anything and we don't know, I think he loves the spotlight. So this element of us talking about it, people feel threatened. I think he's thriving on this. I don't know what he will do, but I think we should pay attention to it. But I think he's sitting back watching TV and loving all of the coverage and that he's being feared.
I think both are at play, absolutely, because they could absolutely be doing all this development and we'd be none the wiser. I don't think it's an accident that everything is talked about, promoted. I think they're even rallying a celebration, a parade of sorts to celebrate just how far they've come in this process. I think that is all very much a part of it and part of the luster. I agree. At the same time, it doesn't mean it's not the case and that they aren't where they are in the development of this thing. And I think it has to be, of course, taken seriously.
I would hope that the Democrats have been pretty silent on this, would actually join and support the President of the United States to let the U.S. men and women who serve on our military know that we are united behind this president and what he's going to have to do as a steady hand in taking care of North Korea.
Don't hold your breath.
We'll see. Never a good idea to hold your breath for too long.